Hello, everyone, and welcome to my I Love Learning podcast. My name is Dr. Gina Anderson, and I'm the CEO of Luma Brighter Learning. And with me today, I am so delighted to have Sondra Norris with me. And I want to read something about her that she has a newsletter, and I'm going to share this after because this is something I think that a lot of us feel. And she talks to a lot, and she's going to introduce herself. But in her newsletter, she talks about the common human experience and how we all want to feel safe. We want to feel protected. We want to feel purposeful living. We want to feel calm and confident. We want to feel enough. We want to feel capable and competent and powerful and strong. So, without any further ado, beautifully written, please welcome Sondra Norris to my show. Hi.
Hi. How are you? I'm
I
so
am
happy to be
awesome.
here.
I'm so glad to have you here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience? Tell them who you are and really what you're passionate about.
Okay. So I'm Sondra Norris, and I am in San Jose, California, which is heating up this week.
It's burning, you said.
Uh, I hope not. Fingers crossed. Um, what I am passionate about, I mean, look, what you just read is a big part of it. And what I am passionate about, I've been working in my career for 30 years,
Mm,
and it started as I just want to help people. And over the years, it got really fine-tuned as I grew in my own life experience. And I met so many different people in so many different industries and so many different places in the world. It grew or got fine-tuned, whichever way you want to look at it, because those seem to be opposites. But it turned into um, so many people at work
mm,
are feeling diminished, they're feeling lonely, they're feeling
mm,
powerless. They get sucked into the machine of whatever their work is. And it's part of human behavior, right? Which is
mhm.
just, it's inescapable, but it's manageable. And so my passion has been become how do I help people, I guess, in a few different lenses on it. One, not to lose yourself at work.
Mm,
Two, not to have to walk around at work or while you're thinking about work or driving to work or whatever, not to have to walk around as a shadow of yourself. We
mm,
should not have to do that as human beings. That costs us spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and when we're returned to our family, whether it's we're working at home and we walk back out into the living room or we're driving back to our home, we are so much less of a human than who we were when we woke up that morning because all of that
mm,
strips us away, right? And it's frustrating and it can feel like there's just no other way. That's business. That's how the world is. Well, I have to
mm.
pay my mortgage, so I have to stay here and suck this up. And at the end of that, I've been doing my career for 30 years, right? At on average 50 or 60 hours a week.
Wow.
Like, do the math and say, that's most of my life that had I not been conscious, I would have been walking around most of my life kind of a crappy person. Crappy
Mm,
to myself, crappy to other people, crappy to my family, the people who matter the most to me. And that shouldn't be okay. And it can feel so hard or impossible
mm.
to change it. You know, we're a cog, we're a number, we're a resource, we're an asset. And what power do we really have to shift that? And that's where my passion is to help every last individual who is at work. And it doesn't even have to be sucky. It can just be, it's not what it could be, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but to really help people kind of reclaim the belief that they have the capability to shape their own day-to-day life, their own way
Mm.
they feel, and to look forward to a future rather than, oh, it's another 15 years of drudgery and suck. But then I
Oh,
retire and then everything will be great. And maybe, you know,
maybe. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. This
yeah.
idea of being a cog,
Oh,
being part of this path forward. And you really describe one of obviously my passion of having a mind of a champion,
Mm.
and you certainly have that. And talking about it is just so empowering to think you're sitting at work, you're listening to this podcast, but really you have the opportunity to move forward. So, is there something you can think about, like with your passion, that
Mm.
stood in your way of it? Like, this idea is so enlightening to think about, that you don't have to stay in this mindset for 15 years. Oh my gosh, that just seems so,
Or more,
horrible.
or more.
Or more, right? Or 30 years or whatever, if you're just starting your career. How did you overcome any hurdles that maybe stood in the way of you doing this passion or getting to this place that you are today?
So I'm a Gen Xer,
Okay.
and we grew up with like you do the work. You shut up and you do the work. You don't complain. And I think that is it's a wonderful discipline to have, right? We're not
Mm,
shy to do the hard work. We don't expect kudos and magic results because we tried something for 5 minutes. We will keep going back to the grindstone
mm,
to try. And I think that's a really important characteristic. Um, Hurdles, living in any company, or I was in, for the most part, corporate America, right?
mm,
That in and of itself is a hurdle because it feels like the system doesn't want you to
mm,
be the full person that you could be. Um, it feels like it wants you to be your job description. Could you please just do your job? And if you have a problem, could you please keep it to yourself? And so multiple times, look, over 30 years, there's a million hurdles and roadblocks, right? And
yes.
um, then that's just the work life. But then you add how life multiplies in complexity. When I became a wife, when I became a mother, when I became a child of an aging parent,
Mm,
when I became a mother of a teenager, all these things, right? They just add in to the complexity if you let it.
mm,
And so I think if I wanted to pinpoint, a couple of really specific hurdles that were kind of outside of myself, right? Like I could say, oh, I had postpartum depression with our first child. That was a hurdle, but I want to pick one that was more like I was working in a big company. I developed a training program for the employees that was loved, that was attended, that it lit people up and it engaged them and it made them feel good to be there. And the head of HR came to me about 14 months after it had been running and she told me to stop. You have to stop doing this because it's highlighting how unskilled our managers are. And to me, that was an integrity killer for me. It was
mm,
I don't think that's the right response from the company. I think the company should be responding by holding managers to a different standard and helping them accomplish that standard rather than taking away from 80% of the company. You're taking away something from them that, yeah, I just felt so I'm getting all roiled up about it right now
yeah.
too, right? And at the end of that experience in that job, um, I had gone to my manager, and we were having kids, and so I kind of took the easy route. I didn't take promotions. I just did what I knew how to do so that I could manage myself. And at the end, I said to my manager, I said, "Hey, if there's opportunities here for me to move up now, I'd like to take them. The kids are, getting on in primary school and I have more time, I have more bandwidth, I'm comfortable with that role and all of that." And she said, after I'd been there for 12 years, she said, "We think you should look someplace else for your next opportunity." So the hurdles that I'm talking about here are the
Mm.
things that companies do that other people do that are just, stabbing your balloon with a lightsaber, right? It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
right?
It's
It's
mm,
who I thought I was, how I thought I was contributing, how I thought I was being valued and trusted and looked
mm,
at as competent and credible. And this happens so many times, right? People
mm,
walk into a company thinking, here's a place where I have an opportunity because they're promising it to feel safe, to feel protected, to be a valued contributor. But at the end of it, a company doesn't care who you are. So you shouldn't care who
mm,
the company is. And that creates this cycle that is, it doesn't help us at all at the end. And
Hmm.
then we're volunteering to go in and just be only a part of who we are. So
How do you overcome that? How do you overcome that uh, the fact that that happened to you? What is it that continues to help you move forward in your mindset?
I zoom out. I zoom
Mm,
way out and I say, I look in the moment, it
mm,
felt horrible. It felt disenfranchising. It felt like I wanted to hit back. It felt like, all the bad
mhm,
swear words, I wanted to say them all. And I wanted to be a victim about it.
mm,
And so I let myself do that for a little while because it hurt. It did. It definitely hurt my feelings. And I had to kind of let go of what was going to be an opportunity. And I said, okay, it's not going to help me and it's not going to help anybody. People look to me. I'm a person that people take a cue from. How should I behave? How should I react? How should I respond? I have a responsibility to not be a little bad person. I'm sorry, I don't know how much I can swear on your podcast, Gina.
it's clean. It's clean.
Okay, I'll keep it clean. Um, and so all the things that I had been teaching people through my career, which was how do you keep your balance inside of a company? How do you be successful navigating your career here? I said, read your own book, Sondra. Take a tip from your own book, which is to
Mm,
recognize the person who made me pull my program. She wasn't doing it because she didn't like me. She did
mm,
it because she was getting pressure from above her. She didn't know how to respond. And so she did the only thing she could think of. Would she look back on that 5 years from now and say, gosh, I shouldn't have done that? Maybe, but I can't
mm,
look at her and
mm,
say, she's a bad person. She's a horrible person. I have to be willing to recognize that she is struggling just like the rest of us. She doesn't feel safe. She doesn't feel that she can take the risk. She might not feel protected. So I had to separate those feelings, first of all.
mm,
And I
mhm.
had to go back to all the people that I did help. I helped them for a lifetime. I gave them
Aw,
tools that they could have for a lifetime to reflect on and to say, now I'm in my next job. I remember this class I took. I can use that to help me feel better. Um, and when I was asked to look for my next opportunity someplace else, that was a real hard one. And I
mm,
understand how people feel when a company lays them off. They've given 20, 30 years of their life to this company, and it just feels so impersonal. It feels so uncaring. It feels like everything the company spouted about values and our people are the most important asset was all a big fat lie. And it's really hard to wrap your head around that and come to terms with it
mm,
and let both exist at the same time. That while you're there, you still did have genuine relationships. You had care for the organization, and the organization had care for you. But it is such a long list of things that happened over such a long period of time that ended up in that thing happening. There were so many variables, so many dependencies, so many people involved or not involved as they should have been. It could be outside forces of the industry, of the global economy. I mean, all these things. Um, I choose to believe that people don't wake up in the morning thinking, how can I screw over Sondra?
mm.
People don't think about us. They
No.
don't,
Mm,
right? um, as much as we would like to think they do. And the last internal role that I had in my career, the last thing I did was a layoff. And it was the hardest thing I personally have ever had to do because I had no responsibility for getting the company to the financial point it was that led to us having to take that action.
mm,
And I had to be in most of those conversations one on one with the manager, with the other human being whose life we were about to explode. And of course, they looked at us and said, "It's your fault. You're the leadership. It's your fault." And it is the most painful thing that a person can do. And when a person is experiencing the most painful thing they can do, they're probably not going to act in their best behavior. And so, if I can hold that graceful position for the person across the table from me and recognize that they're not behaving as best as they could right now, but it's not because they're trying to be a bad person. It's because they're trying to survive this experience also.
Mm.
And if I can connect with that person in any way, not to relieve them of responsibility, but to see their humanity, to see that it hurts a person to hurt another person. And we all deal with that and show ourselves dealing with that in different ways. Um, so I zoom out and I try to take that compassionate view when I feel hurt like that and I feel a hurdle like that has been put in my way through nothing that I did. I try to zoom out and be compassionate for the whole situation so that
I
I don't sit there and be a victim.
Absolutely. Seeing yourself, I mean, that's a good strategy you think about, of having two kind of pieces of it, of this is how I feel, this is how I am, and this is how I'm going to be, because we aren't what happens to us, right? We are who we choose to be. And
Hmm.
our mindsets, like you said, can really help us get
Hmm.
there and understand where the person, and take on that perspective, but
Hmm.
realize that we're all kind of in the same situation. We all want to be valued, we all want to be seen, and we all want to be heard. So in that moment when someone is telling you how they feel, just listen and take that in. Absolutely. I love
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
What do you suggest, like, to move forward from that situation? So what do you do every day to keep you happy? Like, what keeps you happy, and what continues to have that fire that you want to help people overcome these struggles in their day-to-day life?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, but I'll focus on a couple of them. I think through most of my life, I walked through it like all of us seem to do. We have an outward facing persona, right? Which is everything's fine. Oh, I love change. I'm great. Look at my beautiful family. Look at my beautiful everything. And we want to put that face forward all the time. And I started falling for that myself
Mm.
as if, yeah, my life is, ice cream, cookies, and frosting, or
Mhm.
whatever your filet mignon and ribs and chicken, or whatever it is that is your fantasy food that you could eat for the rest of your life. um I think I fell for that, and I think it might be generational. I don't know what it is, but I had to start paying attention to, in the times where I have felt the worst, the most untethered, the most pessimistic, the most skeptical, the most hopeless, because there have been, like, for all of us humans, we all have those moments. What did I do? And what I always did was I reached out to the friends or the family members that I felt safe with, who wouldn't, you know, say, "Oh, you think that's so bad? Well, listen to how bad my situation is." But they would just listen, like you just said, right? They would just
Mm.
listen, and I could just be, and it would help release all the yuck inside of me so that I could think again. Because when we get hopeless, when we get panicked, we're not reacting as a reasonable, rational, logical person, right? Our brains are there to protect us. And so I remembered that I would reach out to people and how immediately I would feel better.
Mm.
In that moment, it was the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted to go curl up in my ball, feel sorry for myself, be angry at the world, make it everybody else's fault. And I really had to find the resolve to pick up the phone and call somebody, or reach out to community people that I had never met before. Um, and I think that, so that's one thing for sure, because we're not here to do this alone. And I know that anyone who stays too much alone, like, you end up in a house of mirrors inside your own head. You can't find the way out.
Mm.
You have a limited amount of information. You only have your information there. And so it's likely that you're going to end up going in circles or trying the same solutions that haven't worked in the past on a daily basis. And because it was generational, or I am who I am, whatever it is, I really didn't believe in this whole thing of, like, self-affirmation or gratitude or count your
Mm.
blessings. I didn't believe in that. I thought
Uh-huh.
it was goofy, and I thought you just got to put your nose to the grindstone and be like Nike, just do it and just bully your way through until things get better.
Mm.
And it wasn't getting better. Like this most recent gigantic hurdle that I am just coming out of now, it
Mm,
took me 3 months of like bashing my head on a wall and,
mm,
not getting anywhere. And I would feel like maybe I took a step forward, but then it would be 3 steps back and I would be back in bed,
mm,
laying in bed. Like I can't
mm,
get myself out of bed. I don't, what's the
mm.
point? Why bother? What is
Right.
the point of doing this? I was beat. I was legitimate beat. And I have never felt beat in my life.
Mm,
Um, and so I reached out to people and I talked with them. I ugly cried with strangers.
I love that.
And um, I was fortunate enough to meet some people who just had a way of looking at me, of talking to me, of being so non-judgmental and
Mm,
saying, here's, 3 questions for you to ask yourself and go think about. And start to find the way in, start to find some relief, start to feel some safety and
mm.
protection. I felt completely vulnerable and at risk in the first 3 months of this year. So that has now transformed or grown into a daily practice of I do sit down and I say, I am this, I am that, I know I can do this, I feel that. I have these cards that I sort and I pull a card
I
and
love that.
believe what you want to believe, right? Whether it's the universe or divine intervention, it knows what you need to read at that moment. I don't know. I don't care. All I know is I start every day like that. I write it down because I receive stuff best by writing it down.
Mm,
And I do it basically first thing in the morning and I listen to what it says. And if it says I am powerful or I am protected or I step forward with courage and enthusiasm to take my next step or I am protected and I am safe, whatever the thing says, I say it out loud, I read it, I write it, and that helps me move forward into the day. It's not always perfect. I still
I
have
love.
days at the end of the day where I was like, ah, crap, I didn't do the things I needed to do. And that's okay. I still have tomorrow.
Yeah.
I can
Say
still
that
do it
out
tomorrow.
loud. Say, I mean, if you say it, if you're
That's right.
listening, say out loud, I am powerful.
It
Say it.
makes
I
a
mean, you say
difference.
it. It does. Saying
It
it,
makes a
writing it,
difference.
thinking it, repeating it, saying it. There's something in neuroscience that has been done called
Yep.
hyperscanning. Hyperscanning is like when they look at imaging of the brain between two brains. You talked about reaching out to people. So they do it between brain and brain, and they're doing it between multiple, not only two, but like groups of brains and people learning together, and what happens in the activity in our brain when we interact with other people. And it's really powerful, not only from a memory and retention standpoint, social learning, but also from this idea of cooperation, empathy,
Mm-hmm.
engagement, and how
Mm-hmm.
you it makes you the neurotransmitters that are released make you feel just incredible, just being and being heard and just listening, being still, all these things that are so powerful that you talk about. And so I'm going to love to share kind of the cards and what you talked about. Even if you tell yourself I soar, I'm going to do good things today. Repeating these power statements are imperative. So thank you for sharing that. And I hope
Yeah.
anyone that's listening can repeat some of those things that you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't believe it. I had told people for 20 years, no, it really works. Trust me. But I don't need to do that. And then I was like, oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. Because what I found out in my working on myself was I
Mhm.
came out of my family of origin, as we all do, no matter how fabulous and bucolic and provided for and lovely our childhoods were, which mine was. I still came out of it believing that I wasn't worth it, that I
Mhm.
wasn't destined for any kind of greatness, that I should expect nothing from
Mhm.
myself. And so when I'm set with this challenge in front of me, my default had become, why try? Why bother? And I hated discovering that about myself because as I am, like, I know I'm strong, I'm powerful, I can get through anything. And it was terrible to make that discovery, but it was also like all of a sudden, all the lights came on. And I was no longer stumbling around in a room failing over and over again. I all of a sudden had the lights on and I could see, don't go down that path, don't go down that path. That's the one to go down. Um, and so as hard as it was in those couple of months, where I spent the better part of every day crying and depressed and forcing myself to do things like walk my dog, like, and try to find some sunshine in that. It those saying those positive things make a difference. It
It's
really does.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So let's end with this.
Yeah.
And I talk about this a lot. I mean, every podcast I mention this because there's somebody out there listening that has lost hope.
Yeah.
There's somebody out there. I know last Friday, one of our partners went out of business, thousands of people without jobs. There's somebody listening that really doesn't know how they're going to go forward. They're at the spot that you were, laying in bed, not knowing what you were going to do the next day. What advice would you have for someone listening who's lost their passion, for work, whether it's passion for work, whether it's passion in a relationship, whether it's passion, to move forward with their life? What recommendation would you have for them, or what message would you have for them today?
Um, I think there's probably two things. The first thing is it's completely reasonable to feel that way. Something has happened and it hurts or it's scary or it makes you really mad or whatever it is. That's legitimate. And um, give yourself permission to feel that way. And then I think the advice is to go back to whatever your well is. If your well is faith-based, if it's family-based, if it's friend-based, um, a productive well. Make it the productive, happy well. But anything that you can find where you can reflect back and say, when was a time that I did feel accomplished or hopeful or the opposite of whatever it is you feel right now? And put yourself in that moment, because even just creating the memory of that moment will help, like Gina was just saying, it will help to change the chemicals in your brain. Um, so even a small thing like just allowing yourself to imagine and think about that. And then I think it's be willing to open yourself up. And sometimes it's be willing to open yourself up to a stranger, because it can be really hard to open yourself up to somebody that you think has seen you in a certain way all this time, and now you all of a sudden are going to be, perceived as weaker or scared or whatever it is. That can be a hard hurdle. So sometimes opening up to a stranger, which is what I did, really helped. And then I went back to people that I knew, because I felt just that much stronger to be able to say, I am so scared right now. And I feel like such a failure right now. And I could say it in a way that somehow they received that in a much more loving and open way, also. I think, sometimes it's the tiniest steps that you can take that will help to just start to shift the balance.
Absolutely. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for sharing that and being
of
here
course.
today with
Yeah.
us. If somebody wants to reach out to you, maybe you're their stranger. If they want to reach out to you, follow, and I'm going to put your newsletter in because it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah.
If someone wants to reach out, what's the best way to find you?
Really, email is the best way. My website's under construction right now, so it's a whole hot mess. So it's just my name, Sondra.Norris@gmail.com. That's the easiest, most straightforward way. And it's, email, you write it, you don't have to look at me. That's the easiest way,
Excellent.
probably. Yep.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being on my podcast today. It was a
Been a
beautiful
blast.
conversation, and I appreciate you. And I'm so glad that you were able
Same.